Last week, I explained how the related notions of a dice roll result that always succeeds and another that always failed was something that was part of the rules as written for Dungeons & Dragons, going all the way back to first edition. And I explained how such rules should be thought of as simply boundary conditions for a game and not as some implementation of probability. Welcome to Indeterminate Infinities, where we discuss multifarious aspects of the art of game mastering. My name is Gene. Before I played my first RPG, I was a war gamer. And now I'm a professional writer and information architect. And I've been DMing for 49 years. So last time, I read some excerpts from the D&D First Edition Dungeon Master's Guide that collectively can be paraphrased into, I can't say that word, paraphrased into some boundary conditions. There should always be a chance, even if it is very small, that a player can escape death. There should always be a chance, even if it is very small, that an opponent can be hit during combat, no matter how good their armor is. There should always be, or almost always be, a balancing chance that a character can fail. Even though I distilled these conditions or principles from the earliest edition of the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, the general idea can be applied to any role-playing game. Most war games have at least some rules that are derived from the same notion. And with good reason. If there isn't a possibility of both success or failure, what is the point of continuing to play? So, the question that remains is, what mechanisms, specifically, does a GM use to implement these conditions? For most editions of D&D, as well as a lot of other role-playing games, such as Pathfinder, the rules as written tend to assign this notion of a critical success to rolling a natural 20 on a d20 for saving throws and for attack rolls. Please note that in the rules as written, as well as in my opinion, for skill check type rolls, rolling a natural 20 on a d20 does not mean a guaranteed success. Since it is the highest number one can roll in those cases, and then apply modifiers as appropriate, the nat 20 should be thought of as merely the best outcome a character could expect in the situation. Comedian Steve Wrigley has a funny short video that explains the difference between always a success and the best you could hope for definitions in Dungeons & Dragons roles really well. I'll put the link to his video down in the description. I should mention that a few weeks ago when I mentioned and recommended a Mystic Arts video, I did put the link in the description of that video, but I forgot to say so in the video itself. Oops. It's there. You can find it. I'll link back to it again here. So if a player rolls that 20 in combat, how do you handle that? If you're playing D&D, the rules as written in the last couple of editions have recommended doubling the damage dice on a critical hit. Seems simple, but does that mean you roll damage as usual, add up the dice, and then multiply that number by 2? Or does it mean that you roll twice as many dice as usual and just add up the numbers? Those two options can give you very different outcomes. There are a lot of house rules I've used, or that DMs I am playing with have used, and I'm just going to list a few. 1. Rather than either of the two interpretations of doubling damage listed above, roll one set of the specified number of damage dice as usual, with any usual bonuses. Then add the maximum possible to roll on a normal hit. So, if the damage for your weapon is usually 2d8, and you have a plus 2 damage for whatever reason, add them up, add your plus 2, and then add 16, as that's the maximum you can roll on on 2d8. I can't do... We'll keep going. 2. A variant of that I've seen a couple of times is to double the bonus as well. So the plus 2 gets added twice, plus 4 instead of plus 2. Some DMs I've played with just want critical hits to automatically do the maximum damage you possibly could do with a damage roll and not double anything. And that, by the way, is the rules as written in 4th edition. Another variant I've had a DM use when I was a player was to roll a second d20. And they had a table of additional effects, such as you disarm the opponent, or you knock them prone, or you knock them back a certain distance, in addition to whatever damage modifier is made for a nat 20. That seems to be less common now that many character classes have feats that allow PCs to do some of those kinds of effects, knock back, knock prone, etc., as an attack or a bonus action, or as part of an attack or a bonus action. 5. I played one time with a DM who had you roll a d20 after rolling a nat 20, and only if you rolled a second nat 20 did you get any bonus damage. Otherwise, a nat 20 was treated as a normal successful hit. 6. I watched a game at a convention once where the DM had you roll a second d20, and if your second roll was a 10 or less, you just did maximum damage. If the second roll was an 11 through 19, you did maximum damage plus rolling damage dice and add that to the maximum. And if you rolled a second nat 20, you did maximum times 2 and rolled the d20 once again. And if you got a third nat 20, damage was maximum times 4. And that was it, no fourth roll. And with any of those 6 variants, the monsters or opponents get the same benefit. So it is possible for them to dish out enormous amounts of damage to the players. For critical failures in combat, most DMs I've played with have the player roll to see if they accidentally hit one of their allies instead of the target, and then inflict normal damage on their ally. The 2 house rules I've seen for critical misses that I have either played under or watched others use are: 1. After the player rolls a nat 1, if the DM has the player roll a dexterity check, and if they fail, they drop their weapon. And I remember one time a combat stopped for a discussion of what to do when an unarmed player who was just punching with his fist was the one who rolled a nat 1. And then, of course, failed his dex roll. Can't drop his fist, can he? Anyway, and then there was that DM I watched that run a game at a convention, the same one who had that rule that could result in inflicting 4 times maximum damage on a nat 20 with additional nat 20s. He had players roll a second d20 after they rolled a nat 1. And if they rolled a nat 1 a second time, they somehow inflicted maximum damage on themselves. Now, I'm just going to be honest here and say that of those, the only one I like to use as a DM is that on a nat 1 you have a chance of accidentally hitting hitting an ally, someone on your side. And specifically, I prefer in that case to re-roll the attack and let the allies' AC and any other protective measures they have figure in. When I've explained that, I have heard the argument, if you're going to give a bonus on nat 20, yeah, it's only fair to do something equally bad to a player on a nat 1. To which I call and I add a classic double on you, thrown in for good measure. I hope some of you got that reference. If whatever nat 20 rule you have for the player characters also applies to the monsters and NPC opponents of the players, then you've already taken care of balance and fairness issues. The reason I personally don't like making nat 1s in combat result in exactly the inverse of a nat 20 is because a character experiencing elaborate bad luck is just not very dramatically interesting. Comedically? Sure. And if you want your combat to feel like an old Three Stooges skit, you should go for it. I find ordinary misses and near misses and the things that the players do and say when that happens funny enough on their own. Dumb luck, catastrophic failures don't make the narrative very interesting. Feel free to disagree if you want. And that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button and consider sharing the video. Click subscribe to be notified when new videos are uploaded. And if you have any thoughts on this thing, particularly if you disagree, leave them in the comments below. And until next time, keep dreaming.